Hello, everybody. This is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Just got off the air a little bit ago and wanted to talk with you and let you know what is on today's agenda. We're talking about 401k plans, and this is a little bit of a preview to the webinar that I'm doing next week, and talking about the ins and outs and should you use a 401k plan, and what's the best way to get the most benefit out of it. And there's so much complication that goes along with trying to manage a 401k plan, trying to pick the investments and do all these different things. And so it comes right down, I think, to one thing that you need to know. And we're going to be talking about that. Just make sure that you go and sign up for one of the webinar times at prudentmoney.com. Also, one last thing, if you are in agreement with me that, boy, the markets look dicey, and there's some rough waters ahead, you might want to have a second opinion of your portfolio and what you're doing. Maybe you're looking for a brand new financial advisor, someone who really manages money. I'd love to talk to you about that. So I go to prudentmoney.com. The info at prudentmoney.com is where you can send a request. We can have a phone call and talk through the pros and cons and take it from there. This is Bob Brooks. Keep the faith. Well, pros and cons of your 401k plan. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, I want to invite you to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Most questions can be asked in an email format. And then there are situations that are a lot more complex, a lot more moving parts. If that's the case and you don't want to go through an email Ask Bob section of the website, you can always look for my calendar, pick a spot, and we will get a phone conference together and talk a little bit about your situation, see how I can help you. That's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. There's no cost, there's no strings, it's there as an available resource. And I want you to make sure that you know it is there so that if you need some help, we can get it to you. That's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. Today we're going to talk about 401k plans, and I'm bringing up some of these things to lead in to the webinar that we're doing next week. We're doing a webinar, same one, on the 7th and the 9th, and hopefully one of those two times will work for you. And answering really two questions. The first one is the 401k plan the right plan for me? We're going to be talking a lot about that today. And the second, if it is the right plan, how do I get the best benefit out of it? Let's face it, you start to work for a company, you talk to HR, they tell you about your benefits, they give you a folder, real nice folder with all the information in there for your 401k plan. You're doing great if you even know how to fill it out and hoping it's right. Then there comes the investment options that you're supposed to learn to fill out. Some companies automatically take care of that process from beginning to end and choose based on your age, these are your investments. That is absolutely no way to go. In fact, I've got a lot of issues with that. That's another time, another show. But I think it's very important to know how to do things. The problem is, and the reason for the webinar, the problem is that it's confusing. And I mean, I've helped so many people through the last 3 decades of being a financial advisor and helped them put portfolios together for your 401k plan. And I enjoy doing that, and that's no big deal to do that. The thing is that it's something that you can do and monitor yourself, and that's what I want to teach you how to do. The problem is that pop culture finance makes it as they talk about it, it makes it seem like it's just so hard to do when there's just one thing that you need to get good at. One thing. And we'll be talking about that next week at the webinar. And you can go to the website, prudentmoney.com, and sign up for that webinar And like I said, it's going to be the same one on two different days. Well, let's talk a little bit about the 401k plan and the advantages and the disadvantages. And this is where we're going to start checking the box. As far as advantages go, the very first one and the main advantage of any 401k plan, and this is in my opinion, is the 401k match. And for me, if it doesn't have a match on it, and what I mean by that is the employer matches in some sort of way every dollar that you put into the 401k plan. And that's what they call it, employer match. If they don't do that, I think that you have to make a hard look at why you are even using the 401k plan. Now, I'm not saying don't invest, and I'm not saying don't save. I'm saying there might be better vehicles for you to do so. So the 401k match is crucial in my opinion. And of course, you're seeing a lot of employers kind of shy away from that ever since COVID hit, and they're kind of using that as an excuse. But I think it's extremely detrimental to have that as a part of your overall benefit. So let's say that it is there. It's a healthy match. Any match is a good match. We can work with anything. And here's the reason why you don't want to miss out on the employer match. Because why would it make sense to throw away free money? And that's what you would be doing. You would be saying, I don't need this money to invest in my retirement account. It's free. I would rather pay for it. So obviously you're not going to say that. So it's the 401k match is the biggie. That's the advantage. Big advantage. Number two, it's automatic savings. You get things set up, it bank drafts, and I would argue you could easily do that for any other account that you set up if you didn't like your 401k plan, and you could do the same thing. But it is nice and convenient at work through your payroll, and you don't see it come out, which I think there is an advantage to that, as long as you're staying on top of it, of course. The amount of money that you can save is way higher than an IRA, and you can save a really strong amount of money that can go far for you down the road. Disadvantages, obviously, no employer match. And then, of course, the selection of investments that are there for you. Now, let's talk a little bit about that, because this is also a problem that I see with a lot of 401k plans. And we're going to get into this in detail next week on the webinar. But the selection of investments is really not a hard thing to equip a 401k plan. And in fact, I would suggest that there's literally 3 different funds that you need for your 401k plan. The rest are really, you really just don't even need them. We're going to talk about that next week too. But most people in pop culture finance, there's no way you can properly diversify. Well, you got to know what diversification means I think, to really to apply it to your investment strategy. And what I found is most people in the media don't really have a good clue as to how it all works. We're going to change that and make sure that you have a good idea of category versus diversification. It's a huge difference. So the selection of investments, not having the right investments available to you, that's a big deal. But what you're looking for is index funds. You're looking for stock index funds and bond index funds. In fact, once again, I could suggest you could have as little as 2 investments in your 401k plan, and you could be okay. Now, some of the other opportunities and this would be an advantage, is they have in fact, someone sent me an email asking me about this yesterday. Basically, they would have a brokerage link. What that does for you is that allows you to go into a 401k provider, some basically their inventory of mutual funds and stocks, and you can buy most brokerage links when you apply for it and it's opened up to you. You can buy stocks, you can buy all kinds of things. Obviously, that is a game changer. The only thing that you've got to be careful about is the expense. They tend to be very expensive programs, and you've got to monitor that to make sure that it's worth the money that you're going to spend in expenses and maybe ongoing management fees, which I have a problem with that as well, because it makes me wonder really how, after they set these programs up, how much management is actually happening. And as you know, we've talked about it, there isn't a lot of management going on as far as investment goes within the professional side of things as it is. But that stock brokerage link is a huge advantage. Now, here's the thing, is that I think it's important that you think out of the box when you're looking at this 401k plan. Here's the problem that you find is that you've been indoctrinated, for those of you or us who grew up with parents who said, I've got to make sure that I teach my kids about money. It's so very important. And fortunately, unlike when I'm 57, when I was if you were in my generation, and you go back, our parents really weren't teaching us about money. I was taught what it means to be a Christian, strong, biblically based home upbringing. Very blessed, very grateful for that. I was modeled what hard work meant, and the values that I was able to take away from my parents. Just literally, probably some of them saved my life, as I didn't make too great of decisions in college. But that's another story, the testimony story. We'll talk about maybe that someday. But it really does come down to money being taught by your parents. And there wasn't a whole lot of that going on. In fact, I saw, mine was, I remember one time, and my dad was one of the most incredible Christian men ever. But I think I don't know this for a fact, but I think he kind of struggled with doing the right things with money. I just remember literally the stack of credit cards that he had. And, of course, all that was shielded from us. And, if when you were brought up when I was, all that was shielded. So today's generation of kids is a totally different ball game. And that is what a huge blessing that is. And so they are open to the different ways that you can invest and grow money for retirement. I think because they know that's up to them. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. We are up against a break. Stick around. I will be right back. Hi, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. For most people, the 401k plan is the most important part of the retirement plan process. At the same time, knowing how to invest, well, it's a challenge, considering that you're given a list of investments and expected to know which ones to choose. What if I told you that there is just one investment process that you need to understand? If you had to narrow it down to one thing to know, this would be it. On May 7th and May 9th, I'm going to be presenting a webinar entitled The 401k Plan, The One Thing You Need to Know. If you are unsure about your 401k plan, this is your opportunity to learn something that can change your retirement future. In addition, I'm also going to give you some ideas on what to do with your accounts outside of your 401k plan. Well, today, sign up at www.prudentmoney.com to learn how to increase the probabilities of success with your 401k plan.
Hi, I'm Jill Taylor, inviting you to join me each Saturday morning at 11 o'clock for Choose Life Radio. You'll hear people from across America sharing their stories of faith, forgiveness, redemption, and restoration. Choose Life Radio will encourage you to fully appreciate the gift of life. You may also find help for you or a friend in need, so please join me Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock right here on Bible School Radio 91.3.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. If you've got a question for me, you know the drill. You can go to prudentmoney.com. There's an email section you can send a question into. It's info@prudentmoney.com. Or you can schedule some time on my calendar, and we can schedule a phone conference if you need. If you have a little more of a complicated situation that you've got questions on, we put that there for you, as because I consider everyone who listens to me as a huge blessing, and supporting Prudent Money, supporting me, and what we're trying to do, and teach people about stewardship, teach people about investing from another standpoint, the other side of the story, if you will. And so I want to give back to you. I want to give back to the community of people who support me, support the radio show. So having said all that, don't feel like, oh, he's too busy. Never too busy to get emails, never too busy to get questions answered. You would be surprised. So just give, if you need some help, make sure that you go to prudentmoney.com. So we're talking about, do we use a 401k plan or do we not use the 401k plan? Because there's other ways to invest. And this is what we're going to cover. We're going to, at the webinar next week, two different dates, and we're going to make the assumption that the 401k plan is going to work. And I'm going to show you how I cannot get over this. The one thing that you have to know that could make the biggest difference. And I'm going to be referring to that one thing here on going forward. And I'm going to make sure that there's a lot of backup educational materials that will go along with this theme of the one thing. But the biggest problem is the 401k plan a fit? And that's what you got to figure out. I would suggest that you look really hard. If a 401k match is not involved, that is a non-starter for me. I would have to be convinced to put money into the 401k plan. I'll tell you what we'll do. Tomorrow we will talk about what the options are if you're not comfortable putting money into your 401k plan. So let's talk a little bit about some of the bad habits that people could be guilty of. We'll just say could. Maybe I've heard about them. Maybe I haven't. Obviously, don't want to embarrass anybody, but you know who you are, okay? And I'm not judging you, and I'm not at all, because money, I've always said it, is a very toxic subject. It's a very stressful subject, and things like retirement stress people out. I get it. So what do most people do? My favorite one is to get definitely don't get the results into you through your email. That would require you to look at them a little bit closer. But if you still get your statements mailed to you on a quarterly basis, you go out there, you get it out and look at it. You walk into your study or wherever you have your bills, and you throw it in a drawer, and you think to yourself, I'm going to get to that a little bit later, but I'm going to get to it. Of course, later never comes. It's a lot of time goes by, and you don't look at it. Not a good way to effectively manage your retirement. The second thing is the once a time, January. I get the biggest kick out of this one client that tells me this story, and he's told me many times. And he was a very successful attorney in the corporate world, and he retired. And he said for years what he would do is he would make a date on January 1st to go into his office and sit down and look at how his investments are doing. Every January, he was done in 5 minutes because he just couldn't do it. Just could not do it. There are people who look at it every 4 to 5 years. I wouldn't suggest that that's a good idea either. You got to come down to asking the question, And I'm going to lay this out there, and then we'll talk about this at another time. But it comes down to what scares you about looking at your statements. You know, one thing that doesn't help is I remember John Bogle, who started Vanguard Mutual Funds, was on my program a couple of times, and he's a legend on Wall Street. But he would be on CNBC during, times that were considered bad in the market, and he would say, it's only noise. Don't pay attention to it. Don't look at your statements. It'll soon pass, and things will get back to normal again. I've always thought, as much as respect as I do have for him, and I do have a lot of respect, that may not be the best way to know what you've got and to know if you need to be making any changes or not. So it doesn't help, obviously, with what scares you. That's kind of it's okay because Mr. Bogle said it was okay. But once again, I think you've got to keep an eye on what's going on and always be willing to make make changes if you have to. But clarity is confidence. If you're clear of where you are, what you're doing, where it's taking you, it can build on confidence, a foundation of realizing your goals. That's why it's just so very important. So you want to turn that negative into a positive. I've been through that, to where I've put off doing things that I should be doing, and it's easy to do as far as money goes. So don't think that you are alone in that situation. So there are, and we'll be talking about this next week, but there are 2 risk levels that you've really got to consider. And I've never heard anybody teach it this way, and I'm really excited about bringing this to you. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak preview. It's category versus diversification. And it really lays the foundation for what's important to talk about on how to make the 401k plan work. And then the number of funds. Do you realize if you set this portfolio up of two funds, and you make a change where you're maybe moving half of Fund 2 into Fund 1, do you realize that you could be affecting 17,000 different types of investments? And we're talking two different funds in your 401k plan. Now, as you're trying to get your brain wrapped around that, which I get, that's something that is will just absolutely, it blows your mind when you see it. But when you see it, and I'll go through this next week, you'll see what I'm talking about, and you'll see that it works. One other thing that I think is important for you to know, you can, if you are, and I think this works great if you're on that 5-year, 3-year time period towards retirement. They have something, you have all this money built up in your 401k plan. They have something called a 59.5 in-service rollover, which means if you're over the age of 59.5, in most companies, you can roll out of your 401k plan, still stay employed, everything's great, into an IRA. And I would suggest that's something that you really do think about, only if it's not a parallel move, only if it's in your best interest. And that is, and if you can see that, it makes sense, and you move that money out, that I think it can be a great advantage, because you now have opened up the vast majority of your retirement funds to strategies and all kinds of things you did not have available to you in the 401k plan. I mean, this webinar is about doing what we have to do to make the 401k plan work. And that's which is possible, very, very possible. So keep that in mind. But there are a lot of ways to do it. And here's the thing that you've got to make sure that if you're talking to a financial advisor about those 59.5 in-service rollovers, that they're not doing a parallel move, meaning you're not really getting very much advantage for making this move, but you're now paying a lot of fees that you weren't paying to begin with that are not really benefiting you. So lots to talk about, and I'm going to take all that information and all that content and cram it into 30, 35 minutes, but it will be so well worth it. It's going to be an investment into you. It's going to be around your lunchtime. And so make sure that you go to prudentmoney.com, fill out a form and say that you're going to join us, and we will confirm that with you, and really look forward to starting. Hopefully an idea that I'm kicking around is a series of these webinars once a month. And, one of the great thing about Christian radio is that it's nonprofit. It's all about education. It's not about marketing and a lot of the investment sales that goes on Saturday AM radio. So this is things you can learn. These are things you can apply. And of course, we're always talking about looking at what the other side of the story is and covering that. And we'll look at tomorrow, what are your options and what are some of the things that you can do, and if they make sense for you to implement. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.